Hey everybody, thank you all for joining us. I don't think the AI algorithm has picked up that we're live yet, but who knows? Maybe the elves in the computer have realized that this is the left hook, and I have a friend of the show, Robbie Jones, has come back. Thanks so much, Robert Jones, one of the foremost experts on Christian nationalism and white supremacy, and how it has always used the cross to advance its violent anti-democratic agenda. Robbie is also the founder of PRRI, Public Religion Research Institute, which does fantastic polls, and he's here to talk about this latest poll that is terrifying. I wish one day he comes on the show and actually gives me like a nice poll that like most Americans
Do something on
just
Valentine's Day or something,
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
they
know.
want to eat like pie. But then we're also going to talk about his book, his very important book that's coming out in a month and a half. It's called Backslide. Show everyone the book.
There it is.
Backslide, Reclaiming a Faith and Nation After the Christian Turn Against Democracy. And also, we have a war criminal visiting tomorrow. Benjamin Netanyahu is going to meet another war criminal, Donald Trump, before going to Lindsey Graham's funeral. And we have to talk about the role of Christian Zionism in the support for Netanyahu, Israel, and what's happening, not just in Iran, but also in Gaza and the West Bank. But first and foremost, Robbie, let's actually talk about this poll. You just wrote a piece about this really disturbing poll. You have three charts, and let me actually do some. Look at this. We got, and you're frozen, by the way.
Oh, no.
It's okay. We can still hear you though. All right. Support for ICE by Republicans versus all other Americans. Explain this to me like I'm a child.
Right. Well, one of the things we did is we took a look at attitudes around. I was going to look at.
Oh no. That's what happened, Rob. Give me 1 second. Folks, I'm talking to Robbie Jones. Robbie Jones is the head of PRRI, a person who spent his entire career talking about, trying to survey and understand religious trends in America, but specifically, why in the last 10 years, like why MAGA and specifically Donald Trump's base happens to be like this unbreakable core of about nearly 70 to 80% of white evangelical Christians. And more, as Robbie has done his polls, they've gone more and more militant, more and more violent. His latest polls that he's about to share right now talk about this immense support of white Christian evangelicals, not just for ICE, but for concentration camps. And we're also going to talk about his new book, Backslide, which is about how white evangelical Christians who are MAGA have essentially usurped and abused Christianity to advance a regressive agenda. And then I also want to talk to him about Netanyahu, who's visiting tomorrow. And people don't realize, folks, that Netanyahu's largest base in America, in addition to many of their right wing, if you will, pro-Israel organizations, it's not just Jews. It's not mainly Jews. His largest base is Christians United for Israel. It is the largest Zionist group in America with millions of followers. That's right. The largest Zionist group in America belongs to white Christian evangelicals headed by Pastor Hagee in Texas. But all right, Robert, you're back. I was filling
Yeah.
in the
Sorry
time.
about that.
No, here we go. Talk to us about the first of three charts. What am I looking at?
There we go. All right. So, as we know, we have just recently had other confirmed deaths at the hands of ICE and in the U.S. And I want to kind of look at this and say, like, who is still supporting this brutality in the country here. And so this is for earlier this year, but it is after Minnesota. So right, it's after the surge in Minnesota. And what we found is essentially it is three quarters of Republicans across the board. They're still no matter
75%.
75%, no matter how you ask it, that they did like we asked about whether ICE officers are making countries less safe. They disagree with that. They favor increased funding. They favor masks, the ICE wearing mask, and hold favorable views of ICE in general. But the key is if you look at uh, everybody else, and this is the key here, is that I think we tend to think of the country as being polarized, and that's true, but we are not evenly polarized. And so I basically put Republicans on the one hand, and these blue bars are everybody else. That is Democrats, independents, anybody who's not Republican. And you could just see how much of an outlier Republican attitudes and support for ICE are here in the country. There's no matter how you ask it, there's no more than a quarter of all other Americans who support any of these things. So it
I mean,
really
this
is,
is fascinating right here. Only 16% of Americans minus Republicans, according to your survey,
yeah.
hold a favorable view of ICE officers. Wow.
Yeah. So even if you look at the all American numbers, right, you get like, oh, it looks like a third of all Americans, but that hides the fact that it's just this super support among Republicans driving that up. And so that's what we want to kind of break out all other non Republican Americans. And you really do see the gap here.
It's wild, because let's just focus on that for a second. I've been seeing something crazy for a while. It's really I'm
Not
silly.
you.
I'm a silly, crazy brown Muslim. We say silly things. We're hysterical. Abolish ICE. We don't need this agency. It existed it was created in 2003. This country's gotten rid of the Department of Education. It's gotten rid of USAID. We had border security before ICE. We don't need it. And I was told that's crazy. You're a crazy leftist. The Rust Belt real American who looks like you, Robbie, will hate us if we say that. But according to your own polls, your polling, when it comes to all other Americans, I'm going to go back to this. I don't know if you guys can see. It seems that my opinion seems to get traction. I mean, I know you didn't ask
Yeah.
for abolish ICE, but Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries, if you guys could see this line right here, favor increased funding for ICE. A couple of months ago, I asked him when I was co-hosting with Joanne Reed, abolish ICE. And he said, don't put words in my mouth. And then Alyssa Slotkin, who is the centrist moderate that Democrats want to promote, said, we can't say abolish ICE. We need law enforcement. And when I asked Neera Tanden, the head of CAP, she said, "Yeah, I'm fine defunding Trump's ICE, which makes no sense." So when it comes to even funding ICE, according to your survey, it's only 19% of Americans, minus Republicans, right?
Yeah, that was for the big increased funding for ICE. Yeah, it's only 1 in 5 Americans that say, and the other one, like, that I think one of the biggest problems is that, these officers are acting, like just rogue militias roaming the streets, and they have no accountability. You can't look at, there's no badge number you could report for misconduct. They're hiding their faces, and like Americans do not support that. Right, that is not the kind of law enforcement that Americans want to see on our streets.
And this was, I saw the date. This was done before the murder of I'm forgetting his name in Texas. It was the Mexican
Yeah,
man who's been here for 3 decades. It was before the murder that happened in Florida. It was before the murder that happened in Maine, where it was an innocent man just trying to survive, and then his daughter, I think, who was wearing those bluey costume,
yeah.
saw her father get shot in the head. So that was before this all happened.
Yeah, and in these cases, I mean, I think at least 2 of those people I know of, were not even the people they were looking for, right?
That's
They
right.
were just like collateral damage and this, uh, you know, crazy drive to meet 2,000 arrests per day, which is what they've been sort of tasked with doing. And so we're going to always see this sort of rogue behavior when you've got these kind of quotas put in place that are like, yeah, round people up, whether you've got a good reason to do that or not.
Okay, let's go to the second chart now.
Yeah.
You said there's three charts, and I'm gonna, I don't know if anyone could see it, but just give me a second. I'm
Yeah,
more
you can see it.
notable are the opinions of white Americans who score
Yeah.
high on the Christian nationalism scale and qualify as Christian nationalist adherents or sympathizers. Okay, now let's break this down. Support for ICE by white Christian nationalists versus all other Americans. So the black and white checkered is all Americans. The red is white Christian national list adherents or sympathizers, and the blue is all Americans minus those white Christian nationalists. All right, talk to me about what we're seeing.
No, that's exactly right. So again, I wanted to see, all right, how much is white Christian nationalism driving these attitudes, and our Christian nationalism driving these attitudes among white Americans?
And
And
that's the red line, folks. The white Christian nationalists are the red line.
yeah, that's the red line. And again, we just see this like, three quarters. Again, no matter what you ask, sir, the kind of ICE surge, the increased funding, allowing them to conceal their identity. These are the same questions in the previous chart, holding
Wow.
favorable views of ICE officers. Again, it's three quarters of white Christian nationalists supporting that. And again, you look at all other Americans, it's 29% is the highest it registers there on anything that's supportive of ICE. So again, it's 2 to 1 of everybody else opposing ICE in all of these various ways. And again, what gives me confidence about this is not just one question, right? I mean, this is 4 different ways of asking about ICE, and you see a very consistent message being sent here is that the American public does not support the surge of ICE officers. The American public does not support this kind of crazy increased funding that the big beautiful bill turned over to ICE. It does not support them concealing their identities. I mean, this there's just not support except among Republicans and white Christian nationalists.
And that number, right? Right before you came on, or when you kind of glitched for a second, I was telling the folks that for the past 10 years, I've been looking at these numbers. Of course, you're the expert, and what I've always said is based on the numbers is Donald Trump can do anything. He is not going to lose 70 to 80% of these white
Mm,
Christian evangelicals. And tell me, it seems to be based on what you said. Of course, that's just one sample size, but
yeah.
you take the aggregate data E that number just doesn't crack.
No, I think that's right. So we've been tracking favorability among Donald Trump, among kind of the American public since 2015. So even before he was fully, the Republican nominee and then president back in one for his first term. And name your scandal over the last 10
Pick a
years.
scandal.
It
Let's
has
pick a
not
scandal.
moved. It'll go up and down a little bit, but like among white evangelicals, like we have hardly ever seen his support go below 2/3 support. Like, doesn't matter what's going on. And the most important thing is at the ballot box, right? 8 and 10 or more. And in fact, in the last time he was on the ballot, even after everything we saw in Trump 1.0, 85% of white evangelicals voted for him for a third time in 2024. So yeah, there's been no movement, no kind of move away, no reevaluation, none of that. And so I mean that actually went into so my I don't know how much, I'll show it again just in case you get missed. So my new book is called Backslide, and the reason why I named it that is exactly because of this sense that not only that term gets used in Democratic backsliding, like the kind of democracy backsliding, but I actually heard that word a lot growing up in the evangelical world
Mm.
as something that happens to your faith. And I think it's a really accurate term to say like that what we're seeing among white evangelicals is this allegiance to this man, this political leader. I think has really now really superseded their allegiance to the faith in any authentic way.
Did you ever imagine them literally just breaking the first commandment and just essentially, because I'm talking about when that golden statue of Donald Trump a few months ago was unveiled at one of his properties.
Yeah.
People forget that he brought together pastors to unveil it.
No, that's right. And there was another weird golden statue with like him with red, white, and blue swimming trunks on that showed up at CPAC a few years back,
Yes, yes.
as well. So I mean, this isn't the first golden calf that's been stood up. That's been Donald Trump here. Yeah, no, it's truly remarkable. I mean, if you the kind of do not make any graven images commandment here is pretty clear. That we've seen here. So, yeah, it's quite striking to see that here. I will say this: when I knew we were in trouble, was back when Donald Trump. You remember when he said, "I could shoot somebody. I could
Yep.
walk down Fifth Avenue in New York, and I could shoot somebody in the middle of the street, and I would not lose any supporters." What people forget is that he said that at an evangelical college. He was at Dordt College when he said that, and the room laughed and clapped. And I was like, "Oh, like okay, if they're going to let him get away with like saying this up front in this evangelical Christian venue, and there was virtually no real pushback about that." And then we followed up into some polling actually early on, and what we found is that before Trump became the nominee, we asked this question and we said. Uh, do you think that an elected official who commits immoral acts in his personal life could still behave ethically and perform his duties in his public life? And before Trump was on the scene, we had 72% of white evangelicals say, no, that's not possible. Right. Immorality in your personal life absolutely bleeds over into immorality in your public life. When after Trump became the Republican nominee, we asked this question again. It went from 72% down to the low 30s. So only about 33% agree with that statement anymore, right? So you could just see the inversion of political ethics inside white Christian circles happening in virtually in real time.
And before I get to the last chart. This is something that, I mean, are you surprised by this? I mean, let me put it this way. It's good to be shocked. We still should be shocked
Yeah.
by the horrors, so you're not numb. But are you surprised?
So look, I grew up in this world, right? I have have a degree from a Southern Baptist seminary. I went to a Southern Baptist college. I was that guy at church 5 days a week, all growing up. So I drank pretty deeply at this well. And there are some ways in which I am. I put it this way: my teenage self would be absolutely shocked if I could fast forward and put him here and have him see what's happening. But as I've watched this march that they've been on over time, what I think happened, if you listen to Trump, what he's basically telling them is, uh, look, um, you see how the country is changing demographically. You know, you and I have talked about this, but I think the biggest thing driving this, it's not abortion, it's not LGBTQ issues, it is racial politics and white supremacy driving this train. And what he's basically telling them is like, look, the country's changing. It doesn't look like you anymore. And I'm the only thing that's going to restore this white Christian nation. I mean, that's been his biggest campaign pledge through every campaign has been that. It hasn't been a certain policy. It hasn't been really abortion. I mean, he removed abortion from the Republican platform, for goodness sake. It really has been this claim to restore a white Christian nation and to put them and their leaders at the front of it. So I think that's the thing that has been the through line through all of it. And given that that's the appeal, um, it's not that surprising to see this happen. It's a sort of, quid pro quo, backroom deal that they've made. With it has There's nothing moral, nothing religious about this. I mean, it really is about dominance and political power.
Yeah, I've always said that they've hijacked Jesus, put a duct tape on his mouth, put him in the passenger seat, slung an AR-15 around his neck, and put a MAGA hat on him, and said, "Shut up, and we're just going to use you as our mascot." And he's like, and they're like, "Yeah, Jesus is fine with this. Jesus likes it." And listen to some country music and whatever cultural artifacts you need to put around it. Right? It's really fascinating to me, right? Because you travel. You and I are lucky. We've traveled. And I've had very good experiences with Christians and Catholics. I went to an all boys Jesuit Catholic high school, but there is just something so fascinating about this American Christianity, which is so tied to this kind of unfettered, ugly capitalism, to misogyny, to racism, and increasingly with these markers, if you will, of culture, right? Like, and of course, folks. It's not everyone who is in the South or, listens to country music or has a pickup truck and like loves their guns. But you could see like, this type of jingoism and this type of pro-military, pro-football, pro-white, this becomes like the Jesus. And you sit there and go, wasn't Jesus a very poor carpenter, a
Yeah.
Palestinian Jew, born in Bethlehem? And suppose he was resurrected, would he be more comfortable, I don't know, like with Palestinians than or poor people than he would be these like mega church evangelical white super Christians surrounded by wealth and opulence. Just putting it out there.
Yeah.
With a huge collection of guns, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, what's so dangerous about this is, and we've seen. I write about this in the new book, actually. That we see echoes of this whenever you kind of see this kind of combination of state power, religion, and the kind of macho swagger, glorification of violence. I mean, and then you kind of try to compare that to turn the other cheek, blessed are the poor, blessed are the meek, right? I mean, there's such dissonance there that that something else has taken over, right? With this movement, and I think that's what we're seeing. I have a line in the book where I talk about, that we're living in a democratically backslidden nation that's aided and abetted by an apostate white Christianity, and I think that's the world we're in right now.
Yeah, it's really, it pains me because, believe it or not, I believe in God, and I know some Christians might hate hearing this, but the Islamic religion has an Abrahamic tradition. So most of the prophets we accept. The only difference, really, the major difference, is we don't believe in the Holy Trinity. We don't believe God has a son, and we don't see Jesus as a son of God. And we see Jesus though as a major prophet, which is why, if you think about it, folks. Notice you'll never hear any Muslim or practicing Muslim ever mock Jesus or Mary? Like, I don't just think about it. Like, when was the last time you heard a practicing Muslim ever disparage Jesus? Doesn't happen because it's a major prophet. And then I went to an all boys Jesuit Catholic high school that I've talked about before. And so when you see this mockery of religion, happens in Islam, happens in every religion. But to see these Christians miss the mark, Robbie, like they've just missed the mark. It's like an arrow that
Mhm.
completely misses the target and then lands in the back of like an undocumented Mexican.
All right, you know that that definition is bringing back my seminary days. So where did I hear "miss the mark"? Even with like little illustrations of an arrow missing its target. I heard that in my Koine Greek New Testament class because there is a Greek word that's used in the New Testament for repenting from sin.
Mhm.
And it literally means that you admit that you've missed the mark here. And I, I'm not shying away from that in this new book of like talking about these
Show the book.
theological
Show the book.
categories. Oh, show you the book. Here's the book again. Backslide, reclaiming a nation after the Christian turn against democracy. But I'm really taking on some of these theological categories. I mean, because there are actually theological tools for talking about the way this version of Christianity has absolutely lost its way. Not only missed the mark, but like missed the entire target. Right, kind of way off base here. I'll give you one example. One of the ones that I think the most disturbing to me, and tells you just in what a dangerous place we're in, is that we now have white Christians, including some very prominent leaders, arguing that empathy is a sin,
Yep.
that empathy is toxic, right? And in the way of living an authentic Christian life. Now, common sense would tell us that like that's a pretty dangerous place to be. And like you only have to ask yourself the question is like, who needs a theology like that?
That's
Right?
it.
Who
Yeah.
who needs
Who's
a
that
theology?
attractive to? Like, who's enticed by that? Who's
Yeah,
inspired by that?
right. So who needs a theology that has excised empathy from its book of virtues? And it's a theology that is out to support power, hierarchy, discrimination, and violence. Right. That's the kind of theology. That's the regime that needs that kind of theology. And so I think that's why we're seeing this stood up. So when you need to be able to see people like ICE killing people in the streets with impunity, that you need a theology that tells you you can't see those images and feel a human connection with the victims, right? Because you need law and order, right? You don't need empathy. And I think this we're going to hear a lot about this about kind of order versus empathy, right? And it is a really dangerous place to be. And we have plenty of examples from around the world, early 20th century in Germany, for example, where you kill empathy on your road to somewhere quite dark and disturbing.
And the opposite of empathy oftentimes is apathy, and apathy is indifference. And then what happens when you have indifference to literal human suffering? And not
Yeah.
just difference to human suffering, but when you are also take a sadistic glee in that human suffering. And that brings me back to the third chart. And we save the worst for last, I guess. I don't know what else to say. But concentration camps, folks. Terrible things have happened historically when people, regardless of their identity, are placed in concentration camps. Talk to me about this final chart.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Let's see. Do we see it there?
Wait, here we go. Do you see it? Support for internment camps among
I
Republicans
don't
and
quite
white
see it. I
Christians.
was seeing the other ones. I don't quite see this one.
Oh, you,
But
you don't see it? Hold on. You see it? Here you go. No? Oh, Robbie's gone. All right, hold on. Let me bring him back. His internet hates us. Folks, I'm talking to Robbie Jones. Robbie Jones has spent his entire career pretty much talking about exposing white supremacy and specifically white supremacy as it intersects and has been aided by white Christians and Christian nationalism. He is the head of PRRI, founder of PRRI, a Public Religion Research Institute that does these really fantastic polls, especially in the past 10 years, really kind of looking at the intersection of religion and politics and, doing these polls to really understand where a large part of Donald Trump's base is, and his uncrackable base are these white evangelical Christians. No matter what he does, 70 to 80% are with him. And I think we lost you right when I brought it up. But let me bring it up again. This
yeah,
final chart. that really kind of
There it
encapsulates
is.
the cruelty of it all.
Yeah.
All right, what are we looking at?
Yeah, well, I was gonna say before I jump into this, I just wanna say, like, as I was saying this as I think I lost you, there are moments as a public opinion researcher where you kinda have these, kind of reflective moments, and I remember when we were first sitting around a table trying to write a question, and I just realized, like, "Wait, we are sitting around a conference table with our research team in America in 2026, and we are needing to write a question about the construction of concentration camps on US soil."
Yep.
And there was like a really, honestly, like a deeply like upsetting moment for me to kind of think like, okay, we really have to figure out how to ask a question about this because this is where we are. So we came up with this question. This is an agree disagree question. It says the federal government should detain immigrants who are in the country illegally in internment camps until
Gosh.
they can be deported. Right. And now, if you look at the All Americans number, you're like, oh, holy crap. Like 41% of Americans are down with that. Right. But then you like look underneath and you're like, okay.
Boom.
And again, what I did looked at is like, we are not just divided in the country. The kind of term that I keep trying to introduce into the vernacular here is like we have asymmetric polarization, which means we have one party that is pulled so far out of the center and to the right in this case that it looks so different than the rest of the country. So here you look at this. So if you look at partisans who supported this, 73% of Republicans are in favor of construction of internment camps on U.S. soil
Wow.
for immigrants. But if you look at all other Americans, that is anybody who's not Republican, it's 26%. Right? It's so different. Like it's a 50-point gap there essentially. And very similarly, if we look at what's the other ideology? It's not just partisanship. What's the other ideology driving this? It's Christian nationalism among white Americans. It is 77% of white Christian nationalist adherents or sympathizers who say, yes, we support putting undocumented immigrants in immigration in concentration camps. And then everybody else, all other Americans, is 31%. So it is just such a, I think, vivid portrait of how this extremist Republican Party that we currently have and this extremist ideological movement of Christian nationalism has so distorted the debate and are so moved the Overton window
Yep.
in this country, right? That now, um, like public opinion researchers need to actually ask the public what they think about concentration camps, right? And this is something that we're actually having to openly debate in this country.
It so this is the I told you so, not you, Robbie, but I brought up this story often. I think it was 2 years into the Trump administration, might have been 2018, and Chris Hayes had me on his show, and I think he was just asking me about, like, when the fever will break, and I
Mm,
said something to him, and I wish I had the clip because he thought that, like, the pain and the suffering would break and then, these people would turn. And I said something to him, just knowing something about America and looking at the polls. I said, no matter what happens, we've lost about 30% of Americans for my
yeah,
lifetime. I said, like, we've lost them. If you want to be really optimistic, 25%. But I said, we're not going to win over 25 to 30, no matter what, even as they're dying. It's like, like Noah's people, like, hey, you want to get on the boat? No, I'm fine. Hey, are you sure? I could float. And you're like, wow. And you fast forward now 8 years later, and I'm convinced. I think this part of America, this type of asymmetric polarization where all of our institutions bend the knee to these bad faith right-wing extremists, as they always have, the Civil War, Reconstruction, right? Not monuments and buildings for Robert E. Lee, yada yada yada. It's not racism, it's economic anxiety. Don't call them deplorable. Like, we just bend over backward thinking that we're gonna placate these people. We're never gonna placate them, Robbie.
yeah,
Ever. Never, ever, 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 ever. Then people say, well, what should we do? And my take on this has always been acknowledge the reality we've lost 30%. We've always lost 30%. And we, the majority, have to assemble like the Avengers, get in our caravan and move forward. That's it. We have to move forward. These people will never move ahead with us. And if a few of them want to get on the caravan, great. But you have to realize they're going to spend most of their time trying to blow up our caravan with grenades and shoot at us with AR-15s, right? So we have to assemble and move forward It's always been this way in America. It'll probably always be this way, at least for my lifetime and your lifetime. And you can't win them over. It's
Yeah.
time to win over the majority and move forward. I'm always called crazy, but you're the expert.
Well, I probably the chapter I may get the most heat over in the book is toward the end. I have a chapter called "Embracing Division."
Mm,
That's making largely this point that if we wait, right, for some kind of 100% consensus, we're never going to get there. And this is always, as you said, it's always been true. This was true in the civil rights era. If we had waited for the Southern Baptist Convention in the South to come along without moving law ahead and dragging it along, we would have never desegregated schools in the South, right? So I think this is exactly right. I think the bad news is exactly what you said. What we see is so where does Trump's floor seem to be in favorability? About 30%.
mm,
When we ask how many Americans in the country are Christian nationalist adherents or sympathizers, it's about 30%. Right. So you do see that threshold is about where there is a kind of dug in group that is really set on, preserving by really whatever means, are at hand and anti democratic means preserving a kind of white Christian country. But that's the good. Here's the good news. Like that's the bad news is that we do have that people dug in like that. The good news is everybody else who wants a pluralistic country, who wants to support a pluralistic democracy, outnumber them by about 2 to 1. Like that's the thing to remember here. So it is about, I think, organizing. It's about showing up. It's about voting, but it's about sort of being heard and not and sort of not. You mentioned apathy earlier. I think that's the
yeah.
biggest enemy that we have right now is apathy. And
Indifference, checking out, not caring. And we
yeah,
have the numbers. I always tell people we have the numbers and the better story, but I've always said, give me a flabby, indifferent, lazy, moderate majority, or give me a small, organized, motivated, zealous minority. I'll take that zealous minority. They'll carve through us like butter, right? And they're organized, they're funded, they're committed, they're like warriors. And folks, we have to just assemble like the Avengers against this threat. I did ask you earlier about this, and I wanted to bring it up. Uh, Benjamin Netanyahu is visiting tomorrow, the United States of America, Tuesday, for those who are watching this a bit later. And he's going to meet Donald Trump, and he's going to make the case to give more, 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 more. And Donald Trump will, folks, he will. And I'll tell you why in a second. And then he's going to go, to the funeral of Lindsey Graham, who was a very straight, heterosexual, religious man who loved women, just totally, absolutely, for sure, folks, from the South, good old boy. Um, the reason why I'm so confident that the Trump administration and Republicans in particular will continue helping Israel is, yeah, you could say APAC, and yeah, you could say the military industrial complex, and yeah, you could say ideology, but people do not understand. And I know this for a fact because I had an interview earlier today and I was talking to the host, and he's like, what? And he was like fact checking me in real time. He's like, what? Uh, Christians United for Israel, Christian Zionism. Can you talk to us about that and how that is driving this disastrous relationship with this ethno supremacist regime in Israel right now?
yeah. Well, I do think one of the chilling things is that it is an ideology and it comes out of this evangelical world. And the thing to know here though is that this is a very Christian story. Right? Christian Zionism is not a Judeo-Christian story. It is a Christian story. It's a Christian apocalyptic story that only ends well for Christians. That's a
Right.
really important thing to say. This does not end well for Jewish people. This narrative, but there is this kind of prophecy, right? This kind of end times prophecy that sort of the restoration of Jerusalem and the state of Israel is part of the end times when Jesus is going to come back for a second time. And so there's this instrumentalist way that white evangelicals have ended up supporting Israel around this very Christian apocalyptic story. But in the end, it's all about Jesus coming back for a second time. It's not really about Israel at all. It's a kind of a means to an end here. And at the end of the day, everyone who doesn't bow the knee to Jesus, right, isn't going to be saved. I mean, that's the way this narrative runs. But it is, I mean, we got Mike Huckabee, for example, right, who is the ambassador to Israel right now, and he will talk about Israel as the Holy Land, right? He'll use that term, and so what it means is that decisions that are being made right now about foreign policy, about what's the appropriate way to deal with a nation state, that's not even entering into the calculation, right? Because there's this ideologically driven knee jerk thing that, oh, if we're a Christian nation,
That's right.
then we should just be supporting Israel, no matter what it's doing. So, like, it cuts off political ethics, it cuts off morality and any more moral considerations, because there's just this knee jerk thing that, oh, yeah, we have to do this so that it'll bring about the second coming of Jesus and the end of the world and this kind of Christian fantasy narrative. Um, it really is not, it's the end of any kind of political ethic, really, when you kind of insert this ideologically driven story into the mix, and that's exactly what we have at the driver's seat right now.
That, folks, that's it. That's what that's the driver's seat right there. So anytime people say, "Oh, Trump has had enough," and "Oh, there's rumblings," and "Oh, he's pissed off at Netanyahu," and "Oh, he's yelling at him," who's his ambassador to Israel? Huckabee. Who's the cosplay crusader? Hexa. Who's that 70 to 80% of his base that he cannot afford to lose and will ride and die for him and with him? White Christian evangelicals, many of them who are strong adherents or sympathizers to Christian nationalism. So there we go. We're stuck yet again. We're in an unwinnable war because of Trump's ego, but also his base, a failed illegal war. Will continue sending billions of dollars. Servicemen will continue dying. People will continue being wounded. There'll be ethnic cleansing. And for some people, it's worth it. All of it is worth it. All these sins are worth it to Mike Huckabee because he thinks, God isn't paying attention, that if he helps engineer this story, that somehow God will bless it, right? Which I also, because it goes across the board. It's not just Christians. You see with Muslims, when Muslims always try to find loopholes. I remember I was in college, and some of the Muslim kids who are older than me, they deliberately misheard a sermon where like weed was not like haram, forbidden, but like was disliked, and they're like, "Did you hear their mom? He said weed was makruh, and so we have like, or like, making out is not the same thing with like having sex, and that's okay, yada 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 yada." And I'm just like, it's such a really perverse relationship with God, as if God is purely rule based. There's no morality, there's no ethics, there's no values, and that somehow you can psych out God and God will somehow bless you, even though you're doing the most unblessed acts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the dangerous thing at home is so what we got, right, is this sort of apocalyptic theological narrative driving foreign policy. And then on the other hand, at home, we've got some of that going on, but we also have essentially this declaration of a white Christian nationalist emergency, right? And so all these other powers, right? And I was going to go out on a limb here and say we're going to see a lot more of this between now and the midterm election,
Yep.
right? And these kind of faux emergencies, right? And so I think that it's always should be an alarm bell for us in a democracy when you kind of get around morality, either with this ideological narrative in foreign policy or by this declaration of emergency. So we got to do this because things are so dire, right? That the normal morality doesn't apply, the normal rules don't apply, and this is right out of the authoritarian playbook. I mean, this kind of move here, and so I think that's going, which is ironic to me, right? When you're thinking about a group that's supposedly driven by their faith, right? Where you would think it would be morality forward here, but that's not with this kind of faith. And that's the reason why I call it kind of a backslidden faith is that this kind of faith is not pushing morality to the fore. It is pushing tribal identity, hierarchy, power to the fore, right? Not things like love and empathy and justice to the fore.
Robbie, thanks so much for making the time. I'm trying to
Yeah.
get you, but you ignored me. You ghosted me, and then you came back on your own. And then I'm also awaiting your book. Please shamelessly promote the book right now.
All right, great. So it is Backslide, Reclaiming a Faith and a Nation After the Christian Turn Against Democracy. It will be out September the 8th, the day after Labor Day. It is available for pre-order right now from pretty much anywhere you want to order your books, audiobook, ebook, hardcover. Be on your doorstep or in your device on September the 8th.
And then also, where's my copy? Number one, and number
It's
two.
coming. Supposed to be
Uh,
coming.
here's the link to Backslide. And do you want to come on the week of the release or the week before?
Oh, let's do the week of.
Okay, let's do the week of.
Yeah.
Folks, for those who joined us a bit late, I'm so glad we got 1,400 people. Whenever we talk about this stuff, I'm always happy that we get an audience because it's so important and no one talks about it. And as you know, you and I have talked about this both publicly and privately. One of the weaknesses of I think Democrats and progressives is that they just kind of ignore religion, religious talk, religious
Yeah.
communities, and they're like, "We have separation of church and state. We think religion's stupid." And I'm like, "That's perfectly fine." But just because you think religion's stupid doesn't mean a lot of Americans don't, value it, and it informs them and their values and their votes. So if you want to, I don't know, smart politics, win over people, speak to them in a religious language, pitch your ideas through these religious values. And look, folks, you have all these clergy coming out against ICE. You have clergy coming out for exposure of the Epstein files. You have clergy coming out for income equality, right? And then you also have Martin Luther King and MLK and Gandhi. All these people were steeped in their religious traditions and faiths. So it's one of those situations in the absence of you speaking these languages and meeting these people where they are. There's a vacuum. Who has captured the vacuum? MAGA.
Yeah.
And look at the cruelty. They justify the cruelty with a cross. Folks, thank you all for watching. This has been The Left Hook. If you can, please become a paid subscriber. It's $3.75 a month. It is like literally, I think, the cheapest Substack out there because it's free. So if you become a paid subscriber, it's $3.75 a month, only if you use this link, theleftook.substack.com/special. But if you can't pay, if times are tough, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on Substack, please just subscribe. I know it sounds ridiculous, but the algorithms are baked, they're cooked, they're rigged. So the more they see, I swear to God, folks, this is true. So the more they see more likes, more activity, more shares, more subscriptions, the algorithm props up this content, a word I hate, Robbie, more. So if you can, do your part. Thank you all for watching. I'll be back in 15 minutes with Jamal Bowman talking about the great freakout over progressive candidates and the Michigan race and AIPAC's influence. That'll be in 15 minutes. Thank you all for watching. Be kind, be informed, and please, oh, please don't be a fascist. Thank you, Robbie.
Thanks, everybody.